Making another video. Yay. Gleno cigarette. Yeah. I'm running out of them again. Yeah, but this is it. This is it. Yeah, I just gotta learn how to. I gotta learn how to quit. That's what I have to learn how to do. Yeah. But anyway, so I really hate, by comparison, these things are just obnoxiously irritating. Anyway, I can't hear still, so sorry about that. Oh, it's so irritating. I don't know how loud to talk, so I can't hear. So anyway, two things I was thinking about. Response to part of a holiday video, blah, 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 irritating. I was thinking about this whole idea, he was talking about reductionism, infinite regress, and, I'm sort of arguing about this kernel thing, this idea that there's a quanta of, there's a fixed point, there's a rudimentary element. So I would argue that to the existence of value, the rudimentary element is the sentient experience. There's nothing else in the universe that we can make valuable except by how it affects feeling things. If it makes feeling things feel better, it's a good thing. If it makes feeling things suffer and be tormented, it's a bad thing. Not complicated at all. And in physics, I think, so yes, I'm going to talk some physics, in a broader sense though, we fixed the problem. So he brought up the example of the infinite points in, like this space here, that there's an infinite division, and there isn't. That's just an assumption that there's an infinite division. But in practical physics, there isn't. There is a quanta of distance, and you can't go any smaller. You can't subdivide the quanta. They flip, let's say. It's all or nothing. They move that one step, and that step is a step, and there's no subdividing. And that's a function of the universe. It has a kernel. So you're not overcoming some paradox. You're not traveling infinite stages of distance. You're traveling a precise number of quanta of distance, Planck distance, if you want to call it something, Planck. And that's it. That's how the thing works. And you can sort of see the precision in it, in the sense that, if you understand physics, there's radio waves, like I said, that have a bandwidth of miles, where two photons travel miles, distance between them, are received by the same electron, presumably, even though there's miles. And so the electron has gone through many cycles before the next one shows up. So the first photon gets entangled, trapped in some manner in the electron, and it waits for the one 3 miles away to get there, and also then they end up being permanently absorbed, and the atom's energy level changes. The energy level of the electron changes through that absorption. But the precision of the atom and its wobbling, so the idea that there's this chaos in matter where it's just bouncing around, well, it's bouncing around in a very precise manner, because it's so precise that even though two photons are 3 miles apart, they interact with the same electron. That electron has cycled, or whatever it's done, and ends up in exactly the same location to receive the other electron, which, it just indicates that this isn't a clock that has any sloppiness to it, that the fundamental nature of the universe is made out of rock solid little pieces, and they just don't, there's no flippin' errors, there's no, it just isn't. It's really, really precise. Theoretically, the distance between two photons, they travel across 15 billion light years of space, and retain their integrity perfectly. Yeah, it's just not a haphazard or sloppy system. What am I doing with my lighter? The battery for some reason. Anyway, talking and smoking, not a great idea, but it feels right. So anyway, I was thinking of Einstein's convergence. So Einstein's theory is that space is, got this stupid dimensionality to it, and somehow it's creating a slide, which things are sliding on, so to speak, into a funnel that describes gravity. But the interesting thing is we see that in reality. We see the convergence, and that's what it's called, convergence. Something leaks out and it pulls the stuff, and it's an infinite convergence with gravity. It just keeps pulling. That's the Einstein way to look at it anyway. And you can kind of think of it like a whirlpool when a drain is draining, right? It just creates or a tornado even. And that's sort of the convergence. It's sort of the idea of gravity. But you look at those convergences and they're so imperfect, and they move and they do all these weird things. And that's because the stuff that they're pulling isn't quanta. They're pulling more complex matter, a medium. And that medium has a lot of other movements built into it. So it's doing a lot of moving as it is in the convergence, where the convergence of quanta space, the quanta that make up gravity, that is a pure one. It doesn't have any collective rotations and movements, and it doesn't have any of that complexity. It's really simple. And so when it converges, it creates a perfect kind of whirlpool which we sense as gravity, and which has this inverse square proportionality, where as you go twice the distance, the force is 4 times greater or less. So it's that kind of cone shape, and it would be perfect if you could see it, if you could visualize that cone. It would be a perfect cone. Wouldn't do any wobbling around. But it's exactly the same thing. And anyway, so that's just another one of these reasons why I'm just so confident that I'm right, is that this fits. This makes the model make sense. The convergence now is understood not to be infinite in terms of the pulling. It's infinite in terms of the pushing. And that's the thing that's there until it dissipates. So while the pressure exists, the pressure is creating the convergence just by anything existing in the pressure field. It will automatically, as I tried to describe, it will collect pressure. There will be quanta that will interact with it, and it'll interact in this equal from all directions until you put two things next to each other and they shade each other from the pressure, and then they'll get caught in each other's convergence, in a sense. I mean, it's the convergence is a nice model. Obviously what's really happening is external pressure is merely pushing things in, and as it does so, changes their direction. So they still have the same direction. They still have the same velocity in a sense. They're just being told to move in a different direction. If you put something with no velocity in the solar system, just stick it there in the solar system, it'll just go straight to the sun. If it has no velocity, I mean, it'll just be pushed. It'll just collect directional information in that one direction, and that'll be it. Okay, what else? yeah, I think that's enough for the physics part. So I'll play some of Hofladay's video and just counter-argue his nonsense. And it's just a lousy, it's a rotten paraphrase. He just keeps doing it. Fundamentally, an argument I was making in the live room he's critiquing is that I'd rather people just made videos, and I'd rather we start with these fundamental premises and explain how I'm wrong. And they don't do that. They just say it's somehow wrong to have a conscious experience, learn from it, that there's this qualitative difference between my feelings, and that the qualitative difference in and of itself is, there's no counter argument. There's no way to say it isn't quite obviously reciprocal. The negative feelings are decidedly negative in and of themselves. You'd never want them if you had a choice not to have them. And the positive feelings are essentially the removal of the negative condition. But regardless, I don't see anything. Yeah, they're providing no reason why that theory is incorrect. They're just saying it's incorrect because they say it doesn't matter. It doesn't have any meaning. There's no such thing as value. I'm experiencing it. The first ouch, the first time an organism went ouch, value existed in the universe. That's my claim. Their counter-argument is ouch doesn't mean anything. I think it's nonsense. On its face, I can't. It's silly. It's like saying water isn't wet. Silly. Okay.
Thoughts about.
Still doing all that nose rubbing stuff. I wish, I'm just saying it for the sake of, making a video that isn't just horrible. You ought to just fix that. It seems like you put a post-it note on there. Don't rub this for 5 minutes. Something like that.
Trick and inmendham's value philosophy. I watched him rant. I thought it was a bit lame of him to want to inmendham to want to log on to Flyora's chat for half an hour just so he could dominate and rant. And
no, they were making an argument. Okay, the facts are there. People can go look at the video. All right, and Vic was just sitting there making these gratuitously sloppy remarks, kind of like yours, saying I have some logical contradiction in my philosophy or some other crap. And I said, no, I'm going to make a counter argument. And I expressly said in the commentary, I don't want to do these live rooms. This is no place to discuss this, because you always start from zero and just make the same arguments all over again. I'd rather make videos, and that's what I do. I make videos, and I play other people's videos, and I make counter arguments. And I think that's the rational way to do some of this. I'm not saying that this live conversation thing has no value, but I'm just saying I don't think it has any value for some philosophical conversations, and especially contentious ones. And yeah, I think it just lacks all kinds of precision that's going to be required to get to how you're defining words. I mean, you're substantially changing all the words as I understand them. Okay, your definitions of words are completely different than my definition and my understanding of words, and that's a fundamental problem. It's got to be worked out. You can't do that really in live conversation. So that was my plea, and I was clearly honest about my intent. I came to correct his mischaracterization of my argument. I made my counter argument. And then as soon as he starts saying negative isn't really negative, the word negative doesn't mean negative, what's the point? I mean, it's just a rubbish argument. There's no real negative because Vic says so. I say it. There always has been a real negative ever since something said ouch. There was a real negative.
Tell people how it is and not understand that telling people how it is not an argument.
Well, it says you. I'm just saying I'm expressing an understanding. I'm explaining how I've acquired it. I think that's an argument. I'm saying I can't see any logical alternative but to recognize my consciousness as a real phenomenon, and that there has real character in the difference between a nail in my eye sensations and the sensations of a massage. Those two sensual experiences are fundamentally different, and the fundamental difference is one is decidedly negative and one is positive in the sense that it is the extraction of all negative from my being.
Yeah, an argument, you have to. No, he doesn't. Everything's such a bold, blunt assertion.
I don't know. I don't think it is. I think the evidence of every bit of human civilization and culture, everything we've learned about evolution and the biological organism, everything we've learned about the sentient organism's behavior, validates the fact that this carrot whip motivational mechanism is a reality, consciousness, and that the realness of this synthetic negative of pain and suffering, misery, torment, horror, is as real as anything real needs to be. It qualifies in every meaningful sense for categorization as a real event.
Everything is such claim of simplicity.
Well, isn't that the whole fucking point, idiot? Sorry. But I mean, the whole point of having philosophical conversation is to describe the truth. And I guess one of my claims is that the truth isn't complicated, like physics or something else. It can get complicated in its little nuances when you start adding all kinds of spins and permutations. But the basic mechanism, the basic on-off switch part of it, is not complicated. And once it's understood, you can gain great efficiency in understanding what spin has any meaning, what cultural spin is, and how it might just be a bunch of fucktarded nonsense.
And yet, Vic Mackey, myself, don't stoop to such levels of constantly, and we could, and in a sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say that you could go any lower than you've already gone, both of you. You can't paraphrase an argument properly. You don't play actual quote argument and counter-argue it. When I say what is the logical flaw in me recognizing my sentient experience as a real experience happening in the universe, and that I have felt it, the feelings themselves have their character. I don't place character on them. They have character in and of themselves as experiences. That's the way the mechanism is designed. The mechanism is designed that when I feel pain, that it be an obnoxious, horrible, awful, nasty thing to be avoided. It be negative, and that the other be the attractive, not bad, getting away from that negative feeling, getting away from those deprivations and hauntings and torments, fetters, is absolutely logical.
It's quite validly said. It's not rocket science. It's quite simple to. I don't know why inmendham isn't getting the point that's being made to him.
And your point is what? It's a brain configuration, therefore it's not real. Well, I'm sorry. It's real. I'm conscious. You're telling me my consciousness is not a substantial event. I'm saying it is a substantial event. Fuck you. You're a lunatic. You want to say it doesn't matter whether I torture you because it's just a brain configuration and brain configurations don't matter. So torture is okay. Perpetual, endless torture. Torture every single thing. Give every single item in the universe, as you can call an item, every rock, give it sentience and then torture it. And you've done nothing stupid or imbecilic or insane or crazy or preposterously destructive or preposterously negative. Of course you have. And you'd be an idiot not to think so. You're an idiot. You're insane. You're crazy. I can't understand what you're talking about. I fail to understand your negation of consciousness as an event. Fuck you. You're crazy.
That his purportment to the idea that life is a game. Well,
so that's sort of changing the subject. But the idea that sentience okay, although individually experienced, is experienced equally among all the players, all the items, and that the items are being manipulated in a sense to compete or use each other to gain relief from their negative, is a fact. That there will be a difference in how the game is played, how the pieces fall. So I don't care whether you make all the pieces white and you just say all the pieces are individual and all the pieces are fighting for their own comfort. And I can just simply argue, well, the piece that causes the least discomfort in all the other pieces or kills the fewest other pieces is the better piece. It's more efficient. It played the game better.
Necessitates that life has a purpose.
No. I'm just saying, once you establish the existence of value, value creates purpose. Once you establish the fact that there's a zone you don't wish, that things can't be acceptably in, a negative zone, that they need to be upgraded. Need. Once you create need, you create purpose. And the need to eliminate negative and maximize positive is just a fundamental part of the math. The fact that the negative destroys the positive in mathematics, it's the same truth in the reality. The negative consumes the good, the value of the good. So it must be stopped. It must be reduced. It must be minimized, or you've destroyed the value of the good. Actually, there is no good. There's just the negation of the negative, and that's the catch, is that's why it's a zero-sum game, that even if you played it perfectly, you still haven't accomplished anything but not made a mess, not made extra negative, but because otherwise you're still going to be stuck with a negative balance in the end, because your goods, although good, are still just negating negatives, and once they've used up their goodness by negating the negative, so they don't have goodness to use somewhere else.
And it doesn't. And even if one was to look at it from a naturalistic fallacy point of view.
Well, I don't even know what that means, a naturalistic fallacy point of view. It's a fallacy when you resort to nature as having intelligence. If you're explaining something by saying there is such a thing as a natural world that runs by these natural laws, then it's not a naturalistic fallacy. It's only a fallacy when you're making an argument that nature has some sort of authority or understanding. Then it's a fallacy. So you don't even got that right.
That the DNA is playing a game with these purposes. It's inmendham's assigned purpose because he's decided.
Right. I've over and over again made videos that I have no will to use this word purpose. I have no desire to mess with it at all. You just keep injecting it as if I keep saying it, and I don't. So why do you keep doing that? I mean, it's basically just lying obnoxiously, aren't you? I mean, I have made direct statements to you saying, fuck the word purpose. Fuck it. I don't need it. Let's just deal with positive and negative. You're making more suffering things, you're making less suffering things, period. You don't need purpose.
That this game of nature is the purpose, or our purpose, which is purposelessness, and he's decided to make a value judgment about things ought to have a purpose.
No, I've made a value judgment saying things ought not to create unnecessary suffering, unnecessary harm. If you're going to create a negative and you're not going to create a redeeming positive, then the negative stands. That's the argument. So unless somehow your negative is creating a positive, which technically you can only create a positive by eliminating a negative, that means you had to eliminate some other negative to get that positive. See what I'm saying? That's the trap here. So there will never be a real good to ever justify a bad. You're just never going to find one. And you'll have the illusion, though, if there's plenty of bad in the world, that you're going to be productive or valuable because there's lots of bad to negate. So you can win points by just getting rid of bad. But it's all bad that shouldn't exist in the first place. So it's not real value.
In a sense, he doesn't understand.
Yeah, this asshole remark. I mean, no, you don't understand. You're too stupid. You can't let go of your own addictions and attachments. I mean, is that the way? Is this an argument? You're saying you're arguing that I'm not making arguments. I'm talking about the reality as I see it and why I see it that way. And here you are making these idiotic commentary about what I don't understand. No, I understand you perfectly. Okay? You're negating the existence of real negative because you find it fucking inconvenient. Period. And you already made that clear in a video where you lamented how awful it would be that if this was true, that real value is in all these other sentient creatures, then your obligations become infinite, almost. And that's true. That's the truth. And it's an inconvenient truth you just don't want to fucking hear. You don't want to hear that your job here, okay, is to fix what's broken. And that's the job of anything that has anything called intelligence. And as soon as intelligence is doing something other than fixing what is broken, it's not intelligent, by definition.
That what we're trying to get at is a truly intrinsic normative statement from a description.
I don't understand why you would do that. A truly accurate statement that's not a description? Please, that doesn't make any sense. No, what you're trying to get is an accurate description of reality. You claim the accurate description of reality is negative sensations are just brain configurations and have no real negative meaning. And I'm just making the counter argument that no, negative sensations are brain configurations, and through that configuration, real value is synthesized. Real negative value happens in the universe for the first time when a sentient goes ouch.
And every attempt he makes is only replacing that, say, a beginning normative statement with a secondary normative statement. And
so this is a lie. Okay, so again, it's not where quote me. Quote some problem I'm having here where I've somehow are switching the bases or doing some of this crap or changing the goals. No, I'm merely stating the net game is just about the comfort of the sentient beings, and that's the only thing to be measured, is whether they're in pain or not in pain, and everything else is just contrived bubble. The rest of it's all just psychological nonsense. Whether you like strawberry shortcake or banana cream pie doesn't have anything to do with the real value of anything. You can want anything. You can desire anything. And the fact is that not desiring at all is the most efficient thing you can be.
His answer to that objection is it's really simple because that is underpinned by this other normative statement, and that is underpinned by this other normative statement, and he only has answers to objections that are in themselves normative statements.
Well, I can't deal with objections that have nothing to do with the reality. So your objection is that I'm not theming conscious experience, that I don't see any reason to them it, to say that there's a difference between my conscious experience and some other conscious experience. It's just conscious experience. It doesn't matter whether a tree is doing it, or a rock is doing it, or an airplane was doing it. It doesn't matter what the thing is that's doing it. The fact that it's being done is the reality. The suffering is the suffering. It just doesn't matter who's doing it. And it's just silly for me to think it does matter, that it would make a difference. So my premise argument is although I'm a selfish individual psychologically, I intellectually understand that selfishness is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
And a normative statement that he gives is never is not answering the objections
Yeah, again, you keep talking about these fucking objections, and I can't find them for the life of me. What is your objection except you're saying I can't believe? It's not rational for me to believe there's any such thing as real negative in the universe. And I'm saying I don't buy your argument from I say so that there isn't. Because my personal experience with sensation is exactly the opposite. They are intrinsically, the sensations themselves are intrinsically obnoxious or comforting, discomforting, comforting. They are themselves that thing. They can't be, I can't see any way to reduce them any further. That's what they are. You're saying they aren't anything. You're saying they are, in fact, non-value components. They have no value constituency. And I'm saying it's absolute rubbish. It's nonsense. Where's your argument? I don't hear your argument.
About the fact that it's a normative assertion that inmendham's making.
I don't care, this normative assertion. I forgot what normative assertion is supposed to mean, if it's supposed to mean anything I'm supposed to care about. Fuck you. Alright? It's a description of reality. You either accurately describe reality or you inaccurately describe reality. You're claiming the accurate description of reality is to say our experiences have no value, meaning in reality, and we're just emotionally playing a silly game, and it doesn't really matter who wins in the end because there's no real value. So if the Nazis won the war, it would have been okay. There's nothing. There's no real harm at stake. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm laughing because this is ridiculous.
Normative, not a word I normally like to use. I guess it's and normally when I hear it in dialogue, it's a little confusing me. So for this purposes, for the audience's purposes, perhaps. It's essentially he replaces one ought statement with another ought statement.
No, I simply state that it's built into the math. You want to say it's an ought statement. I'm just saying it's just built into the intrinsic nature of positive and negative, that they are reciprocals of each other, that they cancel each other out. Matter, antimatter kind of a syndrome. They are yin-yang kind of things, whatever you want to call it, however you want to explain that balance. And that the negative is decidedly, it's intrinsically negative. So I can't use some, like, let's compare it to some other negative thing. I've tried to explain this to you before. I can't compare feeling to anything else in the universe. And you certainly can't compare when you what's the word for that? Well, anyway, when you start making sub-distinctions on feelings, they're still covered by the fact that you don't even have a metaphor for a feeling. You can't compare feelings to anything, let alone compare something intrinsically negative, because there's nothing else intrinsically negative in the universe. So once again, I can't compare it to, well, look at this other intrinsic value. See, and see how it's the same thing as that. But that's the nature of all vocabulary, idiot. Every single word, okay, has to be based on some other word that has to be taken for what it is. Wetness, for example, was just a word to describe the function of water. But it's understandable because now we have all these other things to compare it to. But it's intrinsic. There's no, you can't subdivide it. You can't do anything else to it. There's no, there's no, you can't oblige language to do what you're expecting language to do, which is almost be God written or something. God said this is what the definition of the word is. I mean, we have to just accept the concept of negative as a concept is understood by most people through their feelings, through understanding that bad things happen to people, and bad things are, generally speaking, always associated with bad sensations. but there's no other way for me to deal with the concept. In mathematics, you could say, well, maybe the negative is the positive and the positive is the negative. That wouldn't even fix the problem. The point is that we know they consume each other, and that's the nature of it. That if you add a negative to the positive, you got nothing. And that's the nature of this below grade, above grade, and the reciprocal thing. And I can't give you the concept any clearer than that. But the words bad and good mean something to me. And I can certainly understand the difference between something that what's the right word to use, that's below neutral. Malignant versus benign. Well, that's an even good. See, it's hard to find great comparisons. But the point is that there's an acceptable, neutral, and then there's unacceptable, below grade, substandard, inefficient, unproductive. We can find lots of words to use to describe the nature of something that is negative. And I'm just saying you've taken all the balls off of that negative word and said the word doesn't mean anything. And I just fundamentally disagree. It's the most meaningful thing in the universe. Tormenting sensations.
And another option, sometimes it's subtly entailed in there, this element of personal judgment.
Well, again, he calls it personal judgment for me to say I have personally experienced consciousness and I have felt good and bad sensations. He's saying that's a personal judgment. No, it's a personal experience, and I think I've accurately described the nature of personal experience. And I think what I've described is quite consistent with what's happening to all the other biological sentient organisms, that they are experiencing fundamentally what I'm experiencing in the terms of this idea of whip and carrot. And that the carrot is basically a suspension of the whip.
Places on situations. That's sometimes a little subtle to hear and understand, but it is the truth. He replaces one art with another art.
I'm just going to say, liar. Fuck you.
As
prove it.
In the case of the most blatant, probably the easiest example of a hidden art is that one that I've just talked about, where he says, but and it's for no good purpose. Life does this, and it's not efficient. It's a judgment that life.
I mean, these are different words, right? No good purpose and inefficient. Yes, I used the word inefficient. That there's value to be squandered, that there's math to be done, and your net mathematical number has to be a positive number. If your net number is a negative number, that's inefficiency. Fuck. Insufficiently efficient. I've used those words. I've put those two words together many, many times. Insufficiently efficient.
Ought to be efficient. And so...
Yes, that's by the nature of the word itself. Again, it's a concept everybody understands. Things should be efficient. Yes, that's a good thing. Efficient has as one of its properties. Good thing.
Well, it's just like the definitions of negativity, bad, and value, and so on and so on, circle round. So,
well, whatever, you can claim it's a circle. I'm saying it's a fact. So you're saying your description of reality is that there's no meaning to sentient experience. I'm saying that's has nothing to do with my personal experience as a sentient. I can't rationally make any sense of negating the reality of it. I'm experiencing it. I'm having the sensations. The sensations I don't think can be reduced. And certainly there's no reduction that makes it obvious that they're meaningless sensations. That there's no difference between nail in the eye or cupcake in terms of any kind of value component. And I think that's a ludicrous position. I don't even think Vic Mackey has your ludicrous position. So anyway.
Or do the arts of inmendham circle around, such that they themselves become vacuous?
Says you.
P had been at the time to reiterate the objections, but inmendham ought to know.
Oh, yeah, I keep asking you to please reiterate. I've asked people to write them in comments. What's his objection? Please, somebody point me to this fucking objection that has something to do with my premise. Point me to the objection that has something to do with my contention that consciousness is a real phenomenon and that the sensations that that compose it have real value, quality. Show me his objection that has something to do with reason.
Done by now. I've said it before, inmendham ought to do walk and talks and saying, you know, I say this, and typically they say this, and they don't understand how this objection fails, blah, blah, blah. But no, what he does is just repeatedly asserts.
Well, it says you again.
Well,
this is just such a fucking useless rag.
I've said it before.
You haven't said shit.
Inmendham ought to do walk and talks and saying, you know, I say this, and typically they say this, and they don't understand how this objection fails, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, you're such a fucking coward. I mean, you know, like I said, I go to the trouble to take your argument and deal with it, respond to it. You're not responding to anything real here. You're just making some fucking ad hominem, lazy, vacuous piece of shit argument. This isn't the argument from I would do it differently, but I'll demonstrate no ability to do it differently or better. Yeah, fuck you.
But no, what he does is just repeatedly asserts.
Well, you can say what I do is repeatedly assert. Yeah, I obviously we don't understand each other. So yes, you say, well, look, I mean, this is so obvious to me. I'm saying it should be explainable, and so I'm attempting to explain it. I'm attempting to explain why I'm quite certain there's no reason, no rational, logical, factually based reason to negate the value, significance of sentient experience as a real event in the real universe. None. There's no reason to say it's not really happening. There's no real value when I'm experiencing it, you idiot. Nice fuck. Alright. So yeah, I keep trying to find a way to explain that to people who are stupid. You have a psychology made out of crap by evolution. And it's just all this psychology. And in my opinion, it's just your psychology, your fear of the truth, is preventing you from seeing the truth. Period. Because it's really not that hard to see. Till next time.